most of the time, whenever there is any city event or any council meetings, we don't see you that often in there.
And, I took one position and, we lost that position. I still think it was a bad decision to not have brought the LRT downtown Brampton. And in that times it's frustrating because people won't know why I made a decision or the way I voted. They just know the way I voted. When it comes to road safety, it's a challenge. Mm-hmm. And people are frustrated because.
So, Martin, do we have any numbers where we can see the revenue and the cost to?
When it comes to healthcare funding, right. When it comes to investment from the province and the federal government, we are underfunded in comparison to every other community out there in Ontario. And
what if you were the mayor of the Brampton?
Yeah.
Any 2 or 3 major points where you? So friends, this is 𝐿 Gill show, and this is 12 minutes after 4 p.m. And as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Martin Medeiros, regional councillor from wards 3 and 4, he's with us in studio today. Martin, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much, Harjinder. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and it's my first time actually in the studio.
In this studio, actually.
So it's a great honor, and right here in my ward. So that's even.
This is your ward.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So
I never thought about that.
So I thank you for picking the best place in Brampton.
Right. So Martin, before we continue with all the topics we wanted to discuss today, there are many people, they are already familiar with you and with your name.
Sure.
But at the same time, some people would be interested to know more about you. Who's Martin Medeiros? Let's start with that.
Oh, thank you very much. I was born and raised in Brampton, so I'm a Brampton boy. I just turned 50 this year,
oh really?
Last year. So yeah, I feel like I'm getting older.
You don't look like it.
So but essentially, I was first elected in 2014 to City Council. 2015 election. My apologies. Previously, I worked 12 years at the province of Ontario as a bureaucrat in different ministries, and before that had the experience to work in Portugal, United Nations, European Commission. So I've had some interesting experiences, and I think they've all helped me to be where I am, and I'm on my 3rd term as the regional councillor for wards 3 and 4. Right.
So Martin, how do you see your tenure till today?
Well, I think like anything in life, I think people recognize that I'm someone who's passionate, articulate. There are things I wish I maybe would have done different. I think sometimes my approach, and this is where maturity comes in, it's the art of compromise, and I could do a better job in that, because when it comes to politics, sometimes it can't be black and white. One has to work with other people and be able to find a bridge so that we can all work together and get things done for the city. And at times I'm passionate about issues. I think back to back in 2015, we had the big debate regarding LRT. And, I took one position, and, we lost that position. I still think it was a bad decision to not have brought the LRT downtown Brampton. But, we lost, and, go ahead a couple of years, and just, last year, I supported a position I didn't support before, because ultimately it was more of a politically issue that everyone can get on board. And sometimes you have to sort of work in ways that you may not be 100% behind, but it's the art of compromise. It's the art of getting things done. And that's where I think I could improve. Other areas where I'm really proud of, I think I've developed a reputation. People know with me, at least I'm pretty direct. I don't sort of speak double talk. I won't pretend to, support something or not. I'm pretty from that. And, I'm pretty open to different positions, and I speak my mind, and I'm not afraid to take on challenges and say what I find is the truth. And ruffle feathers, and sometimes that goes well, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes your colleagues like you, and sometimes they don't, and that's just the business.
So actually, on that same note, where you say you're straightforward in many issues, and that's why you were opposing some of the issues where most of your colleagues in council was on a different side, and you were alone, and maybe a couple of you were on the minority side, and a majority of the council was favoring somebody, and you were opposing, and,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So how did you cope with this session?
It's not
this
easy
season?
because the dynamic sometimes, and this is something we learn when you're in City Hall, you sometimes feel that everyone outside should know your rationale, should know the story, they should have all the background. And sometimes I don't appreciate that people are busy with living, with their jobs, their families. So they don't know all the details. They just read the headlines of, that councillor said this or the mayor said this. And, I've appreciated the fact that sometimes I could do a better job communicating outside with my residents of why I take a decision. And then at times it's frustrating because people won't know why I made a decision or the way I voted. They just know the way I voted. And sometimes that's just the nature of the beast when it comes to politics. Communication is so important these days. We have avenues of social media. So you as a councillor, I speak here in Brampton, you have to be aggressive in the way that you communicate your positions out. I don't shy away from media, good or bad. And that's why I love the opportunity to be here, speak with questions. I always feel like I'm doing a better job. I deal with criticism very good. I have thick skin to understand. And sometimes you have important decisions that you make or you take stances, and the consequences of what you're implementing may be not exactly what you desired. So, I think with experience, like anything, I'm in my third term. You realize, some of your colleagues, you may not agree on things, but ultimately you have to work together with them. And, I recognize, for example, Mayor Brown has done a good job in sort of working with all the council on trying to bring, people together. You're never going to find, even in a family, you're not going to get everyone together, liking each other,
Right.
everyone on the same page. But there has to be decorum and respect there. Right. And, I'm trying to do my part to be better in that area.
So is it just my impression, or are you, most of the time, whenever there is any city event or any council meetings, we don't see you that often in there. So is there any specific reason, or do you think?
Listen, that's a good observation on some of the events.
Or maybe you think that by any mean, whether you are there or not, the motion or anything will be passed because you are on the other side only?
Those
Is
are
that true?
those are good observations. So I think there's two things. One, for example, we have a hybrid system that you can be on electronically or not, and at times I will be on electronically on certain positions, but not so much the way the vote, especially with the superpowers now. That's really changed the nature of the balance. So. Right. When you're dealing with budget questions, the mayor really leads, and the provincial government gave the superpower to the mayor. So there's not even this idea, even though council, the mayor wants council to be all, to express a majority opinion. Ultimately, the buck stops with him. So in that I leave with the province, and Mayor Brown hasn't used it in a way which is not appropriate. So I recognize he's really engaged with everyone. On the other issue of events and so on, I've been a little bit more picky and choosy in terms of ultimately. What I pride myself is responding to my residents in Wards 3 and 4, returning their phone calls, attending their homes, dealing with really the issues that matter. And some of the events, I know they're important, and I recognize the fact that they even think about me to invite me. That's a sense of, I should show gratitude, the fact that they remembered me to invite me. Right. And I know that's part of my protocol. But part of it is too, as kids grow older, right. I try to give more importance to family in terms of after work time, evenings or weekends, and I try to give them that. And I try to work with more issues, but that's fair. My own staff tell me that I have to get out there and show my face more, and so.
So Martin, when we talk about the check and balances in any system, so especially if everybody is on one side, then that's very dangerous for the public. That's very dangerous for the residents because nobody is opposing and nobody is there to check and balance. Yeah. So I think at that point, when you are not in favor of most of the time, you are not favoring the council or the mayor and other colleagues. So I think that is the point where it is more important to see your presence,
Yep.
and your opposition at that time. So don't you
Yeah.
think that you should be actively involved in each moment?
I will say this term has been a lot more cooperative in terms of a lot of the issues. I think there seems to be a common consensus around some of these, a lot of these issues that we discussed, such as LRT or the future growth of the city. I think last term there was, some actions and decisions that maybe could have been handled better, and I expressed myself on my part. I was outspoken on, I think, some of the things that happened at the city. I expressed myself in a different way in terms of the questions I ask or so on. But the dynamics have changed. So essentially, when you have a superpower for a mayor, it's really difficult now for us to be in opposition. We can be vocal,
Right.
but there's a fine line for being on an opposite, being on the other side of an argument,
Yeah.
and it's the way you express it as well. And I think a lot of times last term of council, I might have been a little bit more outspoken than I wanted to be. It was a clear divide. And when you take a step back in this term, I'm trying to find more bridges now to work with folks. And I won't lie, after the election results, when you see what happened and where we are, the first, 6 months, you try to understand what it means to have a superpower. How do you deal with the dynamics and so on? And to Mayor Brown's credit, I will say that, he's put out an olive branch. He's working with, councillors who maybe didn't see eye to eye. And I recognize that. And,
Right.
with some of my colleagues, I may not see eye to eye with them, but essentially when it comes to the budget, we can argue all we want, the councillors,
Right.
but who has the last say is the mayor. So,
So Martin, I'm just giving you a hypothetical
Sure.
situation now. So it's just hypothetically, you are a regional councillor at the point.
Yeah.
What if you were the mayor of the Brampton?
Yeah.
Any 2 or 3 major points where you will be doing something different?
Well, I don't think not so much. I think all of us, it's interesting because when I get elected in 2015, a lot of the issues we're dealing with today, there is already a consensus of what we need to do. So like, for example, we talk about Riverwalk, where Riverwalk is the flood mitigation in the downtown Brampton. That's been an issue since other councils. So there's nothing really different I would do than what Mayor Brown's doing or what the previous mayor, Linda Jeffrey, did. It's essentially we need to get it done to unlock the development of our downtown. I think on certain practices or, how you deal with the city, one thing I'm not so much maybe as engaged on the whole sort of religious and ethnic aspect of some of the celebrations. Like at the City of Brampton, one thing I'm not a big fan of is we do flag raisings and celebrations, and we recognize everything. Okay. Other people find that it's important, it's inclusive. I sometimes find
what are
that,
your thoughts then?
Well, like for example, we do flag raisings for every group out there, and I sometimes find that the time we spend doing that stuff becomes more divisive if we spent more time city building.
Okay.
So it would be, for example, at the end of the day, when you elect me, it's not to talk about issues back in India. It's not to talk about issues in other countries, and as much as they are important issues, I'm not at that level of government. I should be worrying about repairing, potholes, ensuring that businesses are supported here, that, we're enforcing bylaws. So I think I would be a little bit more, and that's maybe my bureaucratic background. I'm a little bit more focused on municipal issues and not spend my time dealing with outside issues. But I do recognize people sometimes come to us and they're passionate about that. So the fact that a group wants to come, and I know my own Portuguese community, they feel it's important to come to City Hall to raise the flag. Who am I to say no? But so I think I'd be a little bit not so much ceremonial and more bureaucratic when it comes to and the way I run my stuff. And but certainly, there's no right or wrong. It's just a different approach. And I think that, just again, from my bureaucratic, perspective, I'm very process heavy. I was really pushed to be more process and more transparency and stuff. Like I give you an example, a couple years ago, I moved a motion that anyone who works at the city, their phone numbers and email contact addresses should be made public. Not only does this, show, for example, who do we hire, who works at the city, because at the province, everything is open. You can go on InfoGo at the province, and you can, as a regular employer you can find out who works at where. And I think just to ensure, whenever you do things that encourage transparency It's always good for democracy. It's always good for the people of the city. So, those are little things that I'm sort of passionate about. But,
Right.
again, Brampton's a challenging city to even myself as a councillor. And, I recognize, Mayor Brown does a great job in terms of negotiating and dealing with all the various divisions in the city. And he does a great job to be able to work with different community groups. I myself would be a little bit more bureaucratic, I would say, in my approach.
And what about the relationship between Mississauga, Caledon, and Brampton, especially when it comes to the Peel region?
Yeah, so in Peel region, it's interesting. I have really good, strong relationships with my colleagues in Mississauga and Caledon. I think all of us do. We deal with issues. The passion there is maybe not so. There's not as much focus on what happens at the region. So I think it allows us to be less political and be more collegial in terms of the way we work with each other. It's not untrue to say that sometimes we're on different sides. Even within Brampton Council, we don't have a unified voice. It's improved under Mayor Brown. He certainly has 4 or 5 councillors who are always with him, very strong. So there's a strong block there, a strong sense. And it's good to recognize that. I myself, I seem to be on other sides. I work with the mayor of Caledon, with the former mayor of Mississauga, some of my colleagues, on just other issues that are not so much, city-based. So I do appreciate that approach. And at the region, it's a different dynamic.
And what's your observation when it comes to provincial and city of Brampton's relations?
That's one thing we've really benefited from, the fact that Mayor Brown has strong relationships with people like, for example...
But initially people were thinking that maybe Doug Ford and Patrick Brown will not go along that long.
Yeah, and that's a good observation, because everyone kept telling me the same.
Yeah.
Oh, they don't get along and there's a lot of beef. But at the end of the day, and this is where I say that I would have to learn, and this is where I recognize Mayor Brown, his leadership on this aspect, is that he manages to work and reach across the aisle and work with other people, and it seems that Doug Ford and Mayor Brown are working well together. And you see, for example, Mayor Brown has a strong relationship with Minister Sarkaria. There seems to be, and with all the MPPs, we have a good relationship with all of them. I may disagree on a lot of policy areas or some of the stuff they've done, but I recognize that there's a good, healthy relationship between the local MPPs and the city of Brampton. And I think Mayor Brown's a major reason for that relationship.
Right. So friends, this is 𝐿 show, and Mr. Martin Medeiros, regional councillor from wards 3 and 4. He's with us. Actually, we spent a lot of time on these general discussions, but our topics were road safety and especially recreational amenities for youth and upcoming events for Brampton. So let's discuss some major points on these 3 points. Let's start with the road safety. So what do you think when it comes to the road safety, especially city is promoting street cameras in these days, they are increasing the number of cameras. By July, I think the number of the cameras would be 150 in specific areas.
So it's interesting.
How do you take that?
I was on the police. Board approximately 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, roughly. And so I understand the challenges when it comes to road safety. And as our population increases, and I always remind people, we're the fastest growing city of top 15 municipalities in Canada. Per average, we're at 33 people every day moving to Brampton. So when you're dealing with that simple growth, the traffic, in terms of there's more cars on the road, there's more pedestrians, there's more transit, and also we've invested a lot in active transportation. So coupled with all that, when it comes to road safety, it's a challenge. And people are frustrated because, you're in traffic on Main Street in my area, and then you cut through small neighborhoods where families obviously feel challenged with and worried for their kids, rightfully so. So you've seen the proliferation of speed bumps. Speed bumps are all over the city now.
Yeah.
So we've taken, I think, a 3-prong approach. One is having more cameras, and council's been very aggressive in investing in having more speed cameras.
Right.
We've noticed that's been a deterrent. Speed bumps has been another deterrent. I'm not a big fan of speed bumps, but I recognize that residents bringing speed bumps has worked as a deterrent. And then after reducing lanes into one lanes and adding bike lanes, because sometimes the bike lanes, people come to me and say, why do we have an empty bike lane? I'm not a big fan of it as well, but I do recognize that it brings down the speed, because now you're putting, only to one lane instead of having two fast lanes driving. Certainly Brampton, I'm a resident and a citizen as well, and I watch the news like everyone else, and it seems every car accident in the world is happening here in Brampton. It seems like every, traffic area. So, it's an area of priority for the city. It's an area of priority for the region of Peel Police, and we added 123 officers to the last budget at the region, which we approved to get more people on the ground, to get more cars present, to have that. But, just with the sheer magnitude of our growth, I would lie to you today if I told you road safety is something that we can handle. It's a group effort. It's education as well. It's understanding, where to stop, how to drive, where to go. And then after, certainly we're trying to offer better transportation, better public transit opportunities. And, when we talk about all-way, two-way GO service downtown Brampton, hopefully we're 2 years away, what we keep hearing. The ability that people will not take their cars and go on a train to downtown Toronto, that will also help with trying to decongestionize the area. So, there's not one factor, there's not one magic bullet. It's constantly us maintaining, but it's very difficult to regulate individual behavior. We always hear the complaints around muffler noise.
Yes,
what are you doing about muffler noise? That's the major
problem, actually. That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, so muffler noise is a big issue as well. And finally, the provincial government.
So do you think, do we have enough enforcement
no,
working on for that?
I would sit here, it would be irresponsible for me to say we have enough enforcement to deal with enforcing traffic, the Traffic Act in the city of Brampton. We do a good job, and I say our officers.
It's not only the noisy cars, the bikes too. So sometimes we
motorbikes,
especially in the residential areas only.
Sure, yeah, and again, our Peel Police, if we and these are one of those arguments or one of those discussions that there's a lot of inside baseball. There's a lot of details that maybe the public isn't aware of. Like, for example, one of the major issues we have with our Peel Police is that in terms of representation for population, we're one of the lowest. Right. So if you look at the top 10 municipalities, based on our size, Peel Police would need a lot more investment in resources. So for the little resources they have in comparison to other places like Calgary or so on, we don't have enough police officers for our population. Right. So our population just grew so fast. So police, and to the credit of our leadership at Peel Police, they've really invested in technology. That's why things like the speed cameras, and Mayor Brown has shown some leadership right in the province, trying to get, for example, traffic cameras right on our highways, on 410 and our 407 and so on, because one of the things, you have to amend the Traffic Act to be able to put cameras there. Okay. So he's been lobbying for that. So I think there's a lot of approaches. It's not ideal. We are better jurisdiction than other municipalities, but we're not immune to, unfortunately, what I see, unfortunately, in the news a lot, that Brampton, for one reason or another, traffic accidents seems to be a big issue in the city.
So coming back to the same point where it comes to the speeding cameras, my major concern is still they are not covering the major streets. Especially, they are just putting all the cameras in the residential small streets only.
And the way it rotates, and my apologies for interrupting, but we have to rotate it because we don't have enough cameras for every area. So what we do is every 6 months, based on our calls, based on contacts we get from the residents, we have a prioritized list. So staff recommend, moving the camera from this street to another street because we notice there's a lot more speeding on the other area. That goes there for a couple months, and then we move it back. So we're doing that until we can afford, and it's not a question of affording, that's a wrong term. We've put in an order for traffic cameras, but the company who processes it, there's not enough capacity because Toronto is first in the list.
Right.
So we've did our order. We're pressuring to get the traffic cameras, and we're actually now going to be processing traffic cameras for other municipalities. So that's going to be important.
So, do we have any numbers where we can see the revenue and the cost?
Yeah, it's revenue neutral, but in terms of, yes, that's information that can be available in terms of at every budget year, we'll discuss, for example, what exactly we brought in revenue. But the idea is to be revenue neutral. That pays the cameras and it pays the staff who are dealing with it. The city doesn't make money off of it.
So, but we are not losing.
We're in terms of we're losing.
Because people are concerned.
My understanding is we're not losing, but again, that's something that I have to verify.
Right. So next point would be regarding the recreational amenities, especially for the youth.
Yeah.
Because that's also one of the major issues when we see the area to cover the recreational activities. We have very limited facilities, especially for the swimming pools or some other special racetracks or some gym types facilities.
Yeah.
Ice courts. So what do you think? Are we working on this point so that we can increase the facilities?
Yeah, so it's an interesting observation. I would actually put forth that we're probably one of the best municipalities in Ontario, probably one of the top three.
Sorry to cut you off. So in terms of the proportion
in terms of infrastructure,
population.
in terms of infrastructure when it comes to amenities. But like you said, it goes back to growth in my mind. One of the biggest issues Brampton has, we have too many people now. We have so many people coming in.
So it's not proportionate now.
Yeah, exactly. So we're making key investments, and actually we just approved our master recreation plan last week, and it's going to be ratified in council tomorrow. But exactly addresses that issue. So we have some key investments and new facilities that are going to be opened up, and also we're working with the school board to use their amenities as well. So shared spaces, access to their gyms, access to their fields, to bring city programming. But truth be told, that whenever a program opens up, we're getting long waiting lists of people trying to get their kids in that we've never experienced before. And, just access to fields, right now the growth is just through the roof. But in terms of the quality of our facilities, it's second to none. But certainly this council is really committed to making more investments and having more recreational offerings. And our staff are always looking for available lands. Whenever we notice that lands are going up for sale or that are available, our first thought, especially in Wards 3 and 4, we probably have the least amount of amenities in comparison to other areas of the city. We're always chomping at the bit for new spaces, new opportunities. But one thing, too, we have to start thinking about, and I think that's an area like Wards 3 and 4, instead of looking at green space, we have to look vertically now.
Right.
So as we build buildings and so on, it's now we have to look at opportunities. So Shoppers World is the example. Where Shoppers World, they're going to be building all these buildings there, but we're going to be putting a community hub there, a library, possibly a school. So there's a lot of amenities now that we're looking to couple with the new development, especially in Wards 3 and 4.
So what about the Mission 2040?
Vision 2040.
Vision 2040.
Yeah. So
the
vision was an aspirational idea. It was record number engagement. So we use that as a litmus test or we use it as a guiding principle of where we want our city. It's not an exact science because it was more of a vision of what were the potentials. Like, for example, they identified certain nodes in my area. If you think of where Powerade Center is now, that could be possibly a business development area. We know, for example, there's great interest and potential of a cricket stadium there. So there might be opportunities to do different things that may be Vision 2040 identified. But, in large part, I would say that we followed the aspirational goals of Vision 2040. And that means the vision of having an inclusive, engaged community that has, the ability to access public transit closer to your home, the ability to access recreational offerings. We heard, for example, loud and clear, is that instead of those big recreation centers that you have at Gore Meadows, where it's a huge center and everyone has to drive there, the type of places people want is where you can walk from your home to.
Exactly.
So you shouldn't have to go in a car.
So here, Martin, I would raise one more point because I know at time to time, city offers so many different programs for the residents. But don't you think that's very ironic that within a minute, whenever they open any programs, all the programs are filled.
Yes.
Online, and there are majority of the people, they are just waiting in the queues and they are not able to get the access for those programs.
Yeah, and that speaks to our population growth. Like, again, one thing you can underestimate, and I know people sometimes roll their eyes with me when I say that, one of the number one challenge I would say at the city of Brampton is dealing with our growth. So just to give you a retrospect, we're not the ones who said that we have to grow this fast. We're the ones, it's the province who basically, and there was a previous government, so I'm not saying it was this government, but there was legislation, and they said Brampton's going to be a big city. Great. The problem that we're having right now, and this is the conundrum that we have. So we know, for example, we have an official population of, say, around 650,000, close to 700,000.
700,000, yeah.
But we know that there's around approximately 100,000 people who are unaccounted for.
Even more than that, I guess.
Yeah, more. But the problem is when I go to...
You're trying to be diplomatic.
Yeah. But if I go to Minister Sarkaria, or if I go to the provincial government or even the federal government, and I say, well, we need funding, for example, based on more than our population, they can only fund us on official numbers.
Right.
Do you understand? So they'll only say, well, you have population 700,000, so we can only give this. But then after, that's the frustration we're having. So when it comes to healthcare funding, when it comes to investment from the province and the federal government, we are underfunded in comparison to every other community out there in Ontario. And we are...
So what are we doing to increase
Well,
that number?
we've advocated, we've done public campaigns, and when we talk about, for example, what would I do different, or, certainly I can't do the job that Mayor Brown does and sort of rattling the cage, bringing attention to issues regarding healthcare, regarding, we talked about auto theft and so on. He does a great job, and all the council, jumps on board doing it. So I recognize that, for example, trying to educate our MPs and MPPs to the issue. But what gets me angry a little bit is they know what's good with the issue.
Right.
All of them, MPPs and MPs. Everyone shares the same issue. What they can do about it is a challenge. Right. Not every government, for example, when we talk about we have to do more investment in healthcare in our community, there's an MPP probably out east in Ajax is saying, well, I don't want to approve more funding for Brampton because I have the need in my community. I have frustration when I hear, for example, if you remember William Osler, there's investments in hospitals in Doug Ford's riding, where here in Brampton, we were promised a hospital, and hopefully, in the next year we'll be breaking ground, but I represent Peel Memorial, and we had the announcement back in 2018.
Right.
And even when they start construction, as years go by and days go by, we're even in a worse situation. So not even playing catch up, we've lost the boat. So how do we catch up? There's no easy answer. It's not just throwing money at the situation, but I would hope that the other levels of government, be it ministers or councillors, would be more mindful. But I understand, for example, once you leave, I sometimes joke that if I became minister one day in the province or in the federal government or so on, how would I rectify the situation in Brampton? And it would be difficult because you would really need committed leadership. You would really need a premier that comes to the table and says, I will deal with auto theft or auto insurance. I will deal with this. And to this date, we've had a lot of promises, because if you want to win a majority government, no matter what level, Brampton is one of the places that delivers that majority government, but we haven't had those investments.
And at the last, how do you see today's announcement regarding the auto theft? Mr. Prabmi Sarkaria was on
I think it's encouraging. Listen, anything that you can do
will that make any difference?
I'm not sure to the degree it makes a difference. I'm not sure if people who are breaking the law are going to be worried about, losing their license. I think, obviously, any measure that you can bring in that makes it more punitive, that's important. Right. So I don't say that's a bad measure, but I'm not sure, what the impact will be. But it's positive. At least they're trying to do something.
Right. Martin, I wish we had more time. So we'll have to conclude it now. So your closing remarks, and then I hope to see you in coming days again. My closing remarks is thank you for the opportunity to be here. And what I would say to the residents of Brampton, be engaged in local politics. I know people have a difficult life. Everyone, cost of living has gone up. But I think there's important issues that are impacting everyone's lives. I know in Wards 3 and 4, dealing with the density argument, that's been a big challenge, property standards, trying to get more economic growth, more jobs in the city. So I'm really grateful for those who engage. I want to hear from you, and please express your opinion at the city. So thank you very much. Thank you, Martin. Thank you so much for your time, and hope to see you again. Thank you. So friends, this was Mr. Martin Medeiros, Regional Councillor from Ward 3 and 4. This was our special segment, Political Pulse. We will be back after a short commercial break. Thank you so much.